So my name's Jonathan Winn, and I have been teaching for 10 years. I'm out of San Diego, and I'm a math teacher by trade, but for the last 6 years I've been mainly focusing on calculus and kind of the pathway to calculus. I want to talk a little bit about the sort of the trajectory of my teaching career. I started teaching when I was 23 years old, and I'd say I was a pretty typical teacher, very idealistic, energetic. I had a lot of big ideas, and I was excited to get in the classroom. And I'll never forget my first couple of weeks of teaching. The kids were incredibly quiet, and I was kind of surprised by that, and pretty attentive, and felt like things had got off to a good start. And so I took this approach of being sort of like their friend. And as a result, if they didn't do their homework or didn't do something that I asked of them, I kind of brushed it off and tried to remain friends with them. And little by little, what happened is they began to take advantage of me and manipulate me. And before I knew it, my classroom was out of control. It also just so happened that I was in a school with very little support being provided for the teachers. So I was left to fend for myself, which I did very poorly. And so I remember at the end of my first year of teaching, I barely made it to the end. But once that first summer break came around, I was excited. And 2 months later, I was rejuvenated, and I was ready to give it a crack again. Well, second year wasn't any better. In fact, it was worse. And it was so bad that I had to I took off 14 sick days just to survive the year. And I barely hobbled along across the finish line at the end of the year, and decided that summer, while traveling during my summer break, that I just couldn't go back. It was too demoralizing a profession. It was just a terrible feeling to be driving to work in the morning and really dreading the next 8 hours, and really looking forward to getting home. And so I quit. And during the next couple of years, while I was not teaching, I was kind of poking around, odd jobs here and there, trying to figure out what was going to be my next step, I guess, in my career path. And I started substitute teaching just to make a little bit of money and kind of stay connected to that world of teaching. And one thing that happened during substitute teaching is that I tried out substituting at a high school, which prior to that, I started my career at a junior high school. So I was teaching between 7th and 9th grade. So I decided to try out a high school. I was a little bit apprehensive about that, and I liked it. And I think I started to feel like it was a little bit a better fit for me, the students at that age level. But it's still the teaching, the world of teaching. I just didn't think I could get back into it from what I was seeing as a substitute. I still felt that anxiety. So I wasn't really sure where it was going to take me until I ended up on a campus one day where really, really powerful things were happening, and really good work was being done. In particular, from one math classroom, I remember being really, really pretty captivated as just a substitute teacher, sitting in a staff meeting, seeing data that our principal was presenting about student test scores, and in particular one math class. It was the algebra class. And I turned to the guy next to me and I said, am I seeing this right here? It's like every classroom of math, geometry, algebra, intermediate algebra, they all seem to be at this just kind of base level where I would expect the scores to be. But there's this one group, the one algebra group, and they're just leaps and bounds above everyone else. And he said, oh yeah, that's Mr. Munn, you should go talk to him. So long story short, I sought him out, and he shared with me that if I was willing to become a full-time teacher at the school, he would sort of take me under his wing, and he would share with me all his materials, all his strategies. And I kind of decided that in that moment, if I was going to get back into teaching, that was the way it was going to be. I was going to copy someone who really knew what they were doing. And I wasn't going to have any reservation about copying strategies and techniques, right down to literally some of the phrases he would use to get his students' attention even. And just like magic, they worked. And I used them the next year as a teacher, as a geometry teacher, and I used his strategies, and I used his phrases, and every technique that he taught me. And I had a great year. That was my third year of teaching, and I was in teaching ever since. And that's kind of what's brought me here today. So on the topic of addressing students who opt out, students who put their head down during class, students who start listening to music or something off of their phone. It's my response to that question is that it is a systematic approach. I don't believe there to be one magical thing you can say to a kid to all of a sudden opt in. What I've always found works is a systematic approach that starts with setting expectations really high from day one. And sure, there's going to be those kids who start to opt out from day one. But what has to happen, and I know it to be true, and I've seen it time and time again play out before my own eyes, is that I will present my students with challenges. There'll be daily challenges, and there'll be formative challenges and summative challenges, and those challenges may be in the form of just a daily assignment. They could be a test, could be a project. It's a variety of challenges. In some cases, some of the challenges are statewide mandated challenges, like exams, standardized testing. The students are presented with challenges, and then the key is they are supported. The network of support is so vast, so tried and tested, that they cannot fail. In fact, that is the motto of our school, is that failure is not an option. Excellence is our goal, and failure is not an option. And what I've found is that at first, there's a little bit of resistance, because oftentimes these students who are opting out have been opting out for a long time, and they're used to being allowed to opt out. But what I found happens is, with a vast network of support such as tutors from the university level, peer tutoring, pre-test fix-up sessions, after-school math centers, the list, I think at one point I identified something like 30 different support mechanisms that are in place. With a support network that prevents students from failing, what I found time and time again, it's like clockwork, that student who has opted out for years has their first success. And usually it starts in the form of completing an assignment successfully, correctly. And it may take a little while to get there, but what happens is they complete it. And then their neighbor, who's also opting out, looks over and it's like, what's he doing completing an assignment? He never does his work. And all of a sudden that neighbor decides, maybe I'm going to try. Maybe this is doable. So then he does it. And then the girl next to him, who's been fooling around for years and has straight Fs, starts to notice there's kind of a lot of these jokers are getting it, and they're kind of liking it. And so I'm going to do it. And the next thing you know, you've got a critical mass of students in your class who are opting in, and by the end, everybody's opting in. And so you've created this culture where opting in is fun. And what I know to be true for students and for adults alike is that people like to feel good about themselves. Students like to feel successful. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves. Nobody wants to sit in a class and not understand how to do an assignment and not feel good about themselves, to feel dumb. Nobody wants to get a test back with a failing grade. But it happens time and time again, and oftentimes teachers allow students to do that. What I've seen is that you can, with little successes and building slowly upon those successes, you can take any student who had a predisposition to opting out, and in a short amount of time, I would say within a semester's time, you can get that student to be opting in, not only in your class, but then it begins to spill over to their next class, and the next thing you know, that student's heading off to college.